All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived at my train of thought. It's time to talk about the conference championships and the Super Bowl. We're going to do both in this video. Let's not waste any more time and get to business. We'll start in the NFC Championship game, and I'll start with a bit of a warning, I guess, for future travelers to Philadelphia and Lincoln Financial Field when it comes to a big playoff game and you're a fan of the opposing team. Do not do this. Do not go to the art museum and dress up the Rocky statue. Do not do it. It has not worked for any big-time opponent for any big game in the last 5 or 6 years. The Vikings tried this in the NFC Championship game in 2018. I was there to see it. Fun fact, it was the last game I worked at Lincoln Financial Field. The good news is Minnesota scored the first 7 points of the game. The bad news is the next 38 were scored by the Eagles. That's not great when you're trying to get to the Super Bowl, especially one in your own stadium. The Niners have tried this theory, and the Niners got boat raced almost as badly. It was not great, and the Niners didn't even have the luxury of scoring first. Matter of fact, the Niners had more quarterbacks injured in the game, too, than touchdowns scored. One. Not great when you're trying to get to the Super Bowl. Not great at all. We've seen other teams try this in slightly smaller games, but the point remains the same. Do not dress up the Rocky statue. It is a bad look. And for Eagles fans, it's like I usually say, never get in the way of an enemy when they're making a mistake. And Washington didn't make them to start the game, to be fair to the Commanders. They actually ran the clock impressively well. They got down the field impressively well. 17 plays. Very good stuff. They got 3 instead of 7, but it's not a bad look to start the game. Then, unfortunately for them, they had to give the Eagles the ball back, and it was immediately 7-3. Look at these 3 men right here. They are the primary reason why the Eagles are going to New Orleans and not the Commanders. The Eagles scored 8 touchdowns in this game, 7 of them by these 3 men. 3 rushing tutties by Hurts, 3 rushing tutties by Barkley, and the first 2 carries Saquon had, he scored on both of them. And a receiving touchdown by A.J. Brown, just to throw in some color and some flavor to the mix. And then we got Will Shipley getting in on the fun at the very end with a garbage time tutty. But this game was a wrap pretty much in the second quarter. This was a massacre and a bloodbath, and it shows the difference between a team that is moving by train and a team that is moving by bus. The Eagles are obviously moving by the train portion in this video. Well done by the Eagles to make this happen and dispose of a Commander team that simply wasn't ready for this moment and seemed like they were just happy to be there. Jaden Daniels did try his hardest. Terry McLaurin did catch a touchdown pass. They tried. They did. But honestly, there were just no answers. Never mind just for the tush push and the hilarious plays where Frankie Louvu was basically being Superman and flying over the Eagles' offensive line. That was funny. But aside from that, they did try, the Commanders did. They were just A, outclassed, and B, just not ready for the moment. Maybe Washington will be back. Maybe Washington, now that they'll have the attention of the NFL, will get back to this stage at some point in time. It just wasn't their time. The Eagles go to the Super Bowl. This is the second time in 3 years, and they will face one of these 2 teams, the Chiefs, the Bills, the AFC Championship. 4th time in 5 years that Kansas City has won this battle in the playoffs. Twice in the conference title game, twice in the regular season. The first 3 I've already explained. Kansas City won the first one with relative ease. Buffalo wasn't ready. This is kind of similar, but to a lesser degree than the Commanders-Eagles game I just talked about. The second one might have been the greatest game I've ever seen. In wrestling terms, I would equate it to Shawn Michaels' Undertaker WrestleMania 25. It was, I've often said, the greatest match I've ever seen. Shawn Michaels wrestled a perfect match against The Undertaker that night in Houston. Josh Allen basically played a perfect game that night in Kansas City. The difference is, Undertaker, or in this case Pat Mahomes, got the ball last. And that's what happened. Mahomes got it last. Mahomes got it with 13 seconds to go. They scored 10 points in those 2 possessions. Kansas City won the game in overtime. Then last year, wide right 2. It was maybe the most demoralizing of the Buffalo games, even though they should have won the 13-second game. This was the most demoralizing of the 3 because it brought back old ghosts. And I think the worst part about it for Buffalo is that it didn't have to be this way. All they had to do was keep hitting singles and doubles, and Josh Allen proceeded to try to go for home runs and couldn't hit them. It was rather disappointing for Josh Allen. And then Tyler Bass hooks a ball that was going through, and instead it goes to the right. Buffalo doesn't score in the fourth quarter at all, and they lose the game. And that brings us to last Sunday, where Buffalo didn't make too many mistakes. They've learned not to make them anymore, which is impressive on their part. Josh Allen didn't fumble the ball without Kansas City recovering it. There were a few fumbles in this game, and the Bills got all of them, one of which by Mahomes, which led to a Bills score. And Josh Allen and company were relatively efficient. They didn't do anything dumb, and Allen made some really big plays, especially in the second half. Unfortunately for them, Kansas City, when they had to have it, they got it. And it's not official based either. When they had to have it, they basically got it. For example, the Hollywood Brown play. They needed a big play by their first-year receiver, at least first year in Kansas City, and they got it. And then it looked like Kansas City was going to burn themselves out of a down because the first down right after it was a bad look. Instead, Buffalo saves them. And Buffalo says, okay, we're going to challenge this, and we're going to lose the challenge because it's inconclusive to overturn it. That's not great. It would have been a first down anyway because there was a penalty on the Bills. So all you did was waste the challenge to me. And then Kansas City ends up scoring a touchdown anyway. So it was a terrible decision. Now we get to the obvious other controversial call, the 4th and 1. Did Buffalo get the first down on the play before? They probably should have. Did Buffalo get the first down on 4th and 1 and just wasn't awarded it? Probably also yes. But ultimately, just not enough to overturn it. And maybe Chris Jones getting in the way of the camera to see if Josh Allen got over the yard to gain was kind of an ingenious move by Chris Jones, even if he didn't mean to do it. Great work on his part, I guess. Anyway, Kansas City gets 8 points after that, but Buffalo still had opportunities after that to win this game. They just couldn't make enough plays to do it. Great play by Mac Hollins, yes, to get this game back to even. That was a great touchdown throw by Josh Allen, too. James Cook was also really good in this game, by the way. Took a man's soul in one of the touchdown drives. They had a dominant touchdown drive on his own path in the third quarter of this game. But ultimately, when you had to have it, the Chiefs got it, like I said earlier. That fourth down where Spagnuolo sends half the state of Kansas at Josh Allen and gets a blitz, and Allen has to throw up a duck. And then, fortunately for the Chiefs, they got a little bit lucky with the drop by Dalton Kincaid. And Dalton Kincaid is the sickest tight end of the week, unfortunately for him, as he drops what would have been a first down conversion. Instead, Kansas City gets the 2 first downs they need to run the clock out and bring a lot of different fan bases and a lot of different areas a whole lot of pain. So the Chiefs have retained the AFC Championship. They will be going to the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight year and their 5th in 6. As for Buffalo, we now have 4 losses to the Chiefs for the Bills in the last 5 years. Pain. The 1 year that you didn't lose to them, you probably would have lost to them anyway in 2023. Instead, you lost to Joe Burrow at home. So it's another demoralizing and another devastating way for the Bills season to end. Will they actually get over the hump? We don't really know. They barely got out of Baltimore, at least beating the Ravens, and then they didn't make enough plays to beat the Chiefs yet again. It's just applied to the Bills fans, I guess. So after 3 rounds, I went 2-0 when picking this round, and I am a 9-3 record overall when it comes to the playoff picks. Now let's get to one night in New Orleans next week. Super Bowl 59, Eagles and Chiefs. This to me feels like what WrestleMania 40 was last year. Now, as a wrestling fan, you know this already. It was, I would say, the greatest WrestleMania build of all time, and I'm not alone in thinking this. This Super Bowl coming up also made me think of WrestleMania 39 as well. Roman Cody won, because Super Bowl 57 was Eagles-Chiefs, as you may remember. A great match between 2 evenly matched teams, a great match between 2 evenly matched competitors. One with the aura of being the Tribal Chiefs, Roman Reigns, and Kansas City, one with the team that's trying to finish off their story and their comeback, the Eagles. And we get to the end of that match, and we get to Solo interfering on Roman's behalf with a Samoan spike, And then the second spear by Roman to Cody, and we get Roman retaining the title, and this iconic picture right here of Cody wondering what just happened and Roman celebrating on the stage. And that's kind of how this game felt with the Eagles and Chiefs, right? Great match, evenly matched teams, both teams trading barbs back and forth. But ultimately, we get the shot of the holding call by Brad Bradbury on Juju Smith-Schuster, and Kansas City milking the clock to kick the field goal to get the job done and win the game and win their second title at the time. And now we are here, and it makes me beg this question. Is this WrestleMania 40 Night 1 or WrestleMania 40 Night 2? I'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about the teams in question. The Eagles. I mentioned those three men before. Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. Offensively speaking, these are the three main reasons why the Eagles are here. They have run through the NFC despite what some may think is questionable coaching by Nick Sirianni. It's so questionable, in fact, that the Eagles haven't lost since September, since they got absolutely rolled by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the second time in a calendar year. The Eagles have crushed all challengers before them. Saquon Barkley has been as advertised and even greater. He could have set the rushing record for yards in a regular season and chose not to, ironically against his former Giants. The salt the Tiki Barber would have had would have been all-time hilarious. But Barkley still goes over 2K. He probably wins Offensive Player of the Year, and he's obviously not alone. This offensive line is still amazing, even without Jason Kelce on it. They have been enabling Jalen Hurts to snipe away many touchdowns that Barkley could have had and dominated fantasy leagues with. Instead, Jalen Hurts does his thing. No, he's not the passer that a lot of people probably want him to be. But then again, I don't think he has to be. As long as he takes care of the ball, I think it's perfectly fine what he's doing. A.J. Brown may not benefit because of this, but A.J. Brown still gets the job done when he gets opportunities. Devonta Smith does too, and to a lesser extent, so does Dallas Goedert. They just don't have to throw the ball as much with the dominant run game that they have with Hurts and with Barkley. And the brotherly shove, which 31 other fan bases absolutely despise. Well, technically 30 because the Bills use it a lot too. Anyway, the Eagles aren't just here because of their offense. They're not the pass rushing force that they were 2 years ago, but they're, I think, a more well-rounded, balanced defense. When you have Zach Vaughn, who's arguably Defensive Player of the Year, you have Cooper DeJean, and you have Quinion Mitchell as outstanding rookies. The Eagles drafted back-to-back picks this past April and May, where they were absolutely incredible pretty much from the word go. There's no denying that. And then you have the emergence of a young superstar in the name of Jalen Carter, who has terrorized people up front, and I would argue is one of the reasons why they got out of the Rams game. He saved them with that sack where it looked like the Rams were going to win this game and finish the deal and then host the NFC Championship game. Instead, they get the job done, and Jalen Carter is a primary reason why. Now, they're not alone. This defense is very complete and very balanced, even without Nakobe Dean in the center of it. But they seem to get the job done regardless of situation and opponent. Running up the middle against Carter and Jordan Davis is a bad life choice. I would not recommend it, and yet teams somehow do it. It's kind of dumb to me. But the Eagles make things happen. Darius Slay, and gotta say this about C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he is reverting back to what he was as an Eagle as opposed to what he was when he started the season, when he was getting cooked on the regular at the start of the year, and now is looking like a very productive and efficient safety. It's impressive to say. I will give him credit for that. The Eagles are a well-oiled machine. They can beat you with offense, they can beat you with defense. They're not as adept at beating you with the passing game, but they can absolutely slaughter you with the run game. The Rams learned nothing in this quest, and we saw the Commanders learn even less in this quest. Not great. But now they're here with a greater challenge, and they have to face the Tribal Chiefs one more time. When it comes to the Chiefs, I've said this before. They are the Tribal Chiefs, and very comparable to the Bloodline to me. It obviously starts with the wise man and the Tribal Chief himself. Andy Reid as Paul Heyman, and obviously Pat Mahomes as Roman Reigns. It starts with them. They figure out the game plans. They figure out how to dissect the defense. They figure out how to rip souls away from their bodies, Undertaker style, even though that's not what they do. But they still find a way to make it happen. and take advantage of the slightest mistakes that their opponents seem to make. They did it against Houston, where they waited for Houston to self-destruct, and then they pounced. And they also did it against the Bills. Buffalo didn't self-destruct per se, but Buffalo just didn't do enough to make it happen. And Buffalo, to their best efforts, tried hard to not make mistakes, and ultimately it was the coaching that won out, where Reed outcoached his pupil, former pupil, and Sean McDermott. But they get it done and they make it happen. Travis Kelce, more so like Jey Uso, who obviously Kelce's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to move as such. Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble and is potentially going to be a world champion in due time. But Kelce is another legend and kind of the right-hand man in this situation, similar to how Jey was to Roman. Kelce and Mahomes are still the greatest playoff combo of all time. They've established themselves as such, where they are close to Rice and Montana and Gronk and Brady when it comes to all the statistical stuff, second in all of these things. But in time together, if Kelce stays around long enough, they will get to those records in question. It's tricky to kind of equate some of the other main Chiefs in this situation, but I'm going to go Chris Jones as Jey Uso, who, like Mahomes and Reed and Kelce, they've been there the entire time, and they've made it happen the entire time. So, in theory, Chris Jones is almost as important to the Chiefs' success as Kelce and Mahomes are. He just is. And if that defense is going to continue to cook, 95 is going to be on the end of it. He's going to have to cook just as much and just as efficiently as Mahomes and Kelce have. So I would say Chris Jones is more of the Jey Uso role. Isaiah Pacheco, he's like the little brother here. Give me Solo Sikoa for him. He runs as physical, he runs as angry, he runs as violent as any runner in the NFL. He still does. Yes, he's coming off the injury, but he slowly and surely is getting healthy and slowly and surely making a big impact on games. I will say he's Solo. Despite Chris Jones being the better build for Solo, I would say, in this case, Pacheco is more of the Solo Sikoa type in this spot. You get the idea of what I'm saying here. They are ruthless and cold and efficient, and for a lot of people, they've become the villain. As they say, right, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Kansas City has become the enemy for every other fan base, and they've become the new Patriots in this way. A flashier, more successful, more fun, I would say, style of team than what New England was in their 20 years of tyranny and dominance. Kansas City is an updated version, a modern day version, if you will. They embrace the celebrity just as effectively and efficiently as you'd want your star team, regardless of sport, to embrace. And now we get to the question I asked before. Is this going to be Night 1 WrestleMania 40 ending or Night 2 WrestleMania 40 ending? Where the status quo, the tribal chiefs, the bloodline, if you will, get it done and leaves Cody Rhodes, aka the Eagles, in the middle of the ring wondering what just happened? Or will he finish the story? Will they finish the story? Their comeback, where the Eagles went from winning the title in 2017 to having to completely rebuild it in 2020, and now, after the 2020 season, and now they're back on top of the world for their second title in 8 years. What's my thought on this? As efficient as the Eagles have been this year, on offense and on defense, as effective as they have been this year in coaching, though I don't love Sirianni, both their offensive and defensive coaches have been tremendously good. Vic Fangio has found a system and a style and players who fit that style in Philly that he really needs on defense, and it works. Meanwhile, Kellen Moore is probably going to have the job in New Orleans as head coach in due time, in short order, right after this game. I'll give it over under, we'll say, 4 o'clock Monday afternoon before Kellen Moore becomes the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Monday afternoon, as in next Monday. That's February 10th is what I'm talking about. And he's going to probably be the coach there. Will the Eagles' offense get better? We'll see after this. Will the Eagles' offense get worse? Again, we'll see after this. Even with all the efficiency, even with how well coached they are with the coordinators, I don't think they're going to beat the Chiefs this time. Once again, I don't think they'll beat the Chiefs. The last time they played, it was coaching that got it done. Andy Reid coached circles around Jonathan Gannon, who immediately got the Cardinal job right after this, mind you. And I think that kind of happens here. Reed has never lost to Vic Fangio, and I don't think that's going to happen here. Give me 27-24. Kansas City beats the Eagles. My non-QB MVP is going to be Isaiah Pacheco. And here's why I say this. Yes, the Eagles, I think their greatest strength on defense is their front. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, they've done an excellent job in getting home and causing chaos and wreaking havoc in the backfield. But Kansas City is one of the few teams in the NFL that can counter this with an offensive line that is dominant. Now, on the outside, it's not great. Both tackles have struggled, and Jawan Taylor is Mr. False Start. And the Eagles, you're not getting away with this either because Lane Johnson in the NFC is Mr. False Start. But we already know this. There will be a lot of them, and probably drinking games based off of how many times they get called for said infractions. Or any type of infraction, Jawan Taylor and Lane Johnson. But where Kansas City is great is their interior. They have, I would say, the best center in the game right now, Creed Humphrey. And they have an offense, and they have two guards who are also Pro Bowl and All-Pro type dudes. Not great. And I think these are people that can stand up to the power and the abilities that those two Georgia boys have on the interior. So to me, it's going to be Isaiah Pacheco who gets this done. Harrison Butker, to the disappointment and shock and awe of, I would say, a lot of people in the NFL world and in the world in general, because people don't like Harrison Butker, I think hits the game-winning field goal. I'm going to say, once again, 27-24 Kansas City. Obviously, Mahomes probably gets MVP, even though I think Pacheco is going to be the guy that truly gets the job done here for Kansas City. So there you have it. I think the Chiefs make history. Their third straight Super Bowl win, their fourth title in 7 years, and a lot of people will hate it because the dynasty continues. And for the Eagles, if they are to win the title, hopefully the city isn't burned to a crisp. That would not be great. But what do you guys think? What do you think's going to happen? Post your picks below. Post your non-QB Super Bowl MVP. And we can even take the running backs out of it if you have to. And if I had to, my choice would be Hollywood Brown. If I couldn't pick either of the running backs in Saquon or Pacheco, I would pick Hollywood Brown as my non-QB or running back MVP for that matter. This video will be end of season power rankings. You will see the tiers, you will see what I think of each of the 32 teams and everything else that goes with it. That will be the next stop on my next train of thought.